Hello, everybody. My name is Gloria Quedu, and I want to welcome you to the Caritas Consciousness Project. And this evening we are delighted to have as our guest Swami Beyondananda, also known as Steve Bhaerman. I'd like to just give you a little introduction on Steve, on Swami. So in this evening's presentation, you're going to be treated to a one-man show featuring cosmic comics Steve Bhaerman, Swami Beyondananda, and his slightly more serious alter ego, Steve Bhaerman. First, you'll get to enjoy the Swami's playful take on events of the day, the human condition, and of course, our human conditioning. And not only will the Swami answer your questions, you will question his answers. Then you'll have a chance to meet the man behind the Swami and learn even more about how to wake up laughing and leave laughter in your wake. Swami Beyondananda's humor has been called wisdom disguised as comedy, and comedy disguised as wisdom. Noted author Marianne Williamson has called him the Mark Twain of our time. He's authored a number of books promoting what he calls cosmic comic consciousness. One of his books is called Driving Your Own Karma. Another is When You See a Sacred Cow, Milk It for All It's Worth. Another is Duck Soup for the Soul. And another is Swami for Precedent, a 7-step plan to heal the body politic and cure erectile dysfunction. On the more serious side, Swami's alter ego, Steve Bhaerman, has authored a serious book with cellular biologist Bruce Lipton. That book is called Spontaneous Evolution, Our Positive Future and a Way to Get There from Here. And it's been translated into 26 languages. And it's been called World Changing by both Deepak Chopra and political commentator Tom Hartman. Steve also hosts a radio show called Wiki Politiki and is working on a follow-up to Spontaneous Evolution called Reset Humanity. I like the sound of that. So now to begin the program, it's truly once in many lifetimes that there comes a being so enlightened, so evolved, so pure, that the entire world is transformed. Well, we couldn't find anyone like that, but we do have with us that cross between Ram Dass and Haagen-Dazs, Swami Beyondananda. He's truly deeper than Deepak, roomier than Rumi. So please let us welcome the biggest name in comedy. Beyondananda alone has 12 letters, Swami Beyondananda. Okay, so please welcome.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, and guess what? We have no choice, because no matter where we are, we're always here, and it is always now. So, who would like to be in the now more? Well, too late, already then. If you want to be in the now, you have to be very, very quick, but I predict that living in the now will be the wave of the future, and time itself will become a thing of the past. The calendar's days are numbered. I know this because I was a futurist in a past life. Of course, now I spend all of my time in the timeless now. I think they call that Alzheimer's. Now, I know I'm peering remotely. I'm everywhere at all the time. I'm experiencing ubiquity right now. But it's wonderful to actually be with you people in Boulder, Colorado. I have been coming to Boulder for years and years and years. I first came to Boulder in the 1980s to attend a psychic convention that was unfortunately canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. But since that time, I've totally come to appreciate Boulder as a hotbed of consciousness, including environmental awareness. I hear, and tell me if this is true, that somebody in Boulder actually invented the world's first solar-powered tanning salon. It's outdoors. It's outdoors. Yes? But anyway, it's wonderful to be with you folks in this very, very interesting times. And I understand, Glory, that I am wanted for questioning. By the way, I should say that if anybody out there in the audience has questions, we're going to let Gloria go first. Hold your questions until later. And I have answerable question. I will have a questionable answer for you. So at the end, you'll be able to all ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question, Swami. I understand you've been on a spiritual path for a long, long time. How would you describe your spiritual philosophy?
Well, I would say that I am a fundamentalist with the accent on the fun, which is not to be confused with fundamentalism with the accent on the mental. Yes, because the fundamentalists, they believe that heaven is above us. The fundamentalists say, heaven is where we make it. So why don't we go for heaven on earth just for the hell of it? That's our philosophy. We are not here to earn God's love. We're here to spend it. And as a fundamentalist, I believe that life is a joke. But God is laughing with us, not at us. The Creator is watching the comedy channel. We're what's on. And we are given free choice in life. We get to decide whether or not we laugh. And so if you want to be miserable, go right ahead, whatever makes you happy.
I have another question.
Yes.
It seems the entire world, the global community, is caught up with this COVID-19 pandemic. How have you been dealing with this issue, and are you managing to keep yourself healthy? How?
Well, I would have to say, oh look, the sun is coming out. See, and I'm in the shadows. You're seeing the shadow part of me right now. Nothing we can do about this, by the way, but the sun just came out. Actually, if you have been locked down for 3 months with loved ones, and your loved ones are still liked ones, then you are doing really great. So that's a good sign. Now, when we heard about the social distancing, I took that very, very seriously. And I went, you know what, if I'm going to do social distancing, I'm going to go the distance. So I took the opportunity to take that trip I've always wanted to take around the galaxy to the center of the Milky Way. Now, I have been to the center of the Milky Way, and you'll never guess what I found there. Chewy nougat. Chewy nougat is at the center of the Milky Way, and you thought that was just the Three Musketeers. I hear the snickers. I hear the snickers. And so I think that in this entire condition, the most important thing that we have is our attitude. We have to have a positive, up attitude. For example, all people have been talking about being locked down, locked down, locked down. The whole idea of being locked down, that is a downer. I have reframed the entire situation. I am not being locked down. I am being locked up. Doesn't that sound much better? Yes, very, very important. And so part of keeping ourselves sane and whole during these times is to cultivate the positive power of laughter. And this is very, very important because you've all heard that laughter heals. And maybe you heard the story about that this is good for your immune system. Your immune system is helpful for the immune system. And maybe you've heard the story about Norman Cousins. He was a writer back in the 1970s. And he was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness that was so serious, I can't even pronounce it. And instead of going to the hospital, he checked himself into a hotel room with Marx Brothers movies and candid camera reruns, and he got well. And when he cured himself, the medical establishment decided that they are going to study the healing power of laughter, which is kind of like, well, it works in practice, but does it work in theory? And when they actually studied the physiology of laughter, they found that when we laugh, it creates these hormones called endorphins, which are our natural painkillers. Laughing improves immune function. Laughter lowers the blood pressure. Because when we laugh, it causes our blood vessels to dilate. Better than having them die early. I want mine to die as late as possible. And I also found out, you're going to love this, laughing actually burns calories. Did you know that? So I'm very excited about a new program I'm starting. It is called Laugh Your Ass Off. Lose weight, lose weightiness at the same time. And so if you're able to keep your sense of humor during these times, you will be stronger immune-wise and better able to resist any physical difficulty that comes your way.
Okay. But, you know, it sure seems like there are many crises all coming to a head at the same time. What's your take on this?
Well, you know, what I've always said is that when things come to a head, we have to come to the heart. It is very, very important. And we do have a multiplicity of crises. In fact, my colleague Bruce Lipton says, the cellular biologist, he says that crisis precipitates evolution. And if we look around us at all of these crises, we see the chances of precipitation are about 100%. And it's very challenging to people to have the world be not like they thought it would be. Many people are being very challenged right now, and they're asking the question, is this the hand of God at work or just the middle finger? People are wondering about that. And it's gotten so dire that people are actually nostalgic for the George Bush years, right? Remember, during George Bush years, people would say, you know, cheer up, it could be worse. And they were right, it is. And in fact, there are people who are actually talking about the end times. I met a man not too long ago who was disappointed because the rapture didn't happen. I said, so the rapture didn't happen. It's not the end of the world, right? But because of all of this talk about end times, I went to the book of Revelations, and you would not believe what it said. It said that the sign that the last days are at hand, it says, and the last trump shall blow. The last trump shall blow. And many people are saying, well, okay, Trump blows, we know that. I look at him as America's balloon karma payment. He is helping us awaken to what I call a great upwising. We'll hear more about that later, where we wake up and wise up, yes? And that's why I only have compassion for him. I only have compassion because behind every soul that's healed, there is an unhealed soul. And for you light workers out there, your job is not just to heal souls, but to re-soul heals. I've got a new program for doing that. It is called From A-Hole to B-Hole.
What about the political polarization? How do you see that situation?
Well, a new word. It's not a situation. It's a situation. A situation. Everybody knows what that means. Detrimental situation. They go together. We have a deeply divided body politic. Half the people believe our system is broken, and the other half believe it's fixed. So people are very divided on this. We've been divided into two political tribes, the red tribe Republicans, blue tribe Democrats, who have spent all of their energy arguing about whether it is worse to kill the born or the unborn. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth has been stolen by a very small percentage of the uncommonly wealthy, and the bill has been sent to the not yet born. So what do? Well, again, we have to, in the past, we would have a revolutionary uprising to overthrow the system. Well, in these times, we need an evolutionary upwising to overgrow the system. We need to bring left and right, front and center, to face the music and dance together, to turn the funk into function and leave the junk at the junction. We need to bring red tribe and blue tribe together to sit and talk in sacred circle until they're purple in the face. Because only by being together as one purple people will the peeps outnumber the perps. And if you want to defeat Citizens United and corporate personhood, the way to do it is through purple peoplehood, where we gather together around the virtues and values that the 90% of us who are not sociopathogens agree on. And that is the mission of the Great Uprising. Now, I know things are polarized right now, so I have a two-step program to heal the body politic. 2 steps because it works, mathematically proven to work 6 times faster than 12-step. Step number 1 is to de-elect the misleader. Our current leader, you know, it used to be that we accused people of we accused our politicians of telling half-truths. In our case right now, a half-truth would be a big step upward. It would be a big step upward, yes? And so what we have is as somebody who he's actually shown that not only can anyone grow up to be president of this country, he has shown that you don't even need to grow up to become president of this country. Yes? So that's step 1. Body politic acting as a coherent entity to do that, but that is only the first step. Because it's not about impeaching this president or that president. We need to impeach the entire impeachable system of pay to play. Now we have corporations. Many corporations live offshore, only come onshore to feed. And instead of paying taxes, they decided that they're going to pay the legislators directly and eliminate the middleman. And what they're doing, they're using their energy to gain unfair advantage. They're using their energy, what the Chinese call qi, to gain unfair advantage. This is called cheating. Cheating. So more than a new president, we need a new precedent. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, where the government does our bidding, not the bidding of the highest bidder. And so that is really where we need to bring all the people together in conversation to overgrow the current very negative situation that we have.
Good advice.
I would say that we are the leaders that we've been waiting for.
Yeah. Swami, what about health and well-being? What are your secrets for staying healthy, happy, and well?
Well, of course, we talked about the power of humor. I think part of being healthy, you know, the word health means to restore wholeness, yes? And part of the wholeness and the holiness is to actually be at one with all of life. You know, very recently we had July 4th, Declaration of Independence. Well, what we need in order to reset our species during this time of great evolution and set ourselves forward on a new path, we need interdependence, independence, and interdependence. Interdependence is our connection with the great source, one spirit. And the good news is we're all one with the same one. The universe has us surrounded, might as well surrender. And we surrender to the power of love. And this is our choice. Every moment is, do we feed love or do we feed fear? And the good news is love is more powerful than fear. Otherwise, we'd be singing, all you need is fear. She fears you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, we're not singing that. That is a very, very good thing. So number 1, interdependence is our connection with the source. Number 2, independence. Independence is recognizing ourselves as totally unique, just like everybody else. Each of us has been given a special gift just for entering. You're already a winner. And so what you need to do is you need to find that special gift that you've been given. and do that which I call your work of heart. Now, many people have many things that they want to do. This is called a bucket list, right? You have a bucket list. A bucket list is a list of all of the undertakings you wish to undertake before being overtaken by the undertaker. That is the bucket list. And so in this independence, you recognize yourself as a singular entity in this sea of humanity and in the web of life. And finally, interdependence, we recognize that we are connected with other people. And part of this great evolution is liberating ourselves from the past programming, because for the past 5,000 years, we've been living under the rule of the lowest common denominator. And the golden rule has been overruled by the rule of gold, which is do unto others before they can do unto you. Well, this has left a lot of residue. And so the question for our species, our existential question, can we undo the do-do that has been done, or will the done do-do be our undoing? That is a serious question. And so we want to cultivate health from the inside out, because in order to have healthy out there, we need to have healthy in here. People are talking about fixing our healthcare system. What we really need is an entire system that is healthy and caring. We need a healthy, caring system, and then we'll need to treat illness less, because we will be building health more. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Swami, you're proposing a sane world. You must be crazy. Well, I thank you, Gloria, and all of the people on the line, because you're helping us to create a sane asylum by committing yourself to sanity, which is health, love, and coherence, and that is the root of all health and well-being.
And still, we have to stay sane. How do we stay sane in this time of great upheaval?
Well, it's interesting. It has been predicted that there's going to be great upheaval, but I have to say that compared to downheaval, upheaval is a lesser of two evils, right? And of course, people are very confused these days. In fact, there was a poll. Apparently, 65% of the people in this country are feeling confused, and the rest are not sure. In fact, if you've heard of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you're not even sure about that. So the way to stay sane is to leave the beliefs in the head. You see, I say that beliefs lie in the head, truth lives in the heart. Because in the head, we have beliefs that keep us separate. We know that. That's what all the polarization is about. And what people believe is totally unbelievable. So we need to leave the static for the head for the ecstatic of the heart. Because the more we expand our hearts, the less we'll need to shrink our heads. And funny thing is, laughter does that for us. Because what laughter does, when there's a ha-ha, there is often an aha in the wake of the ha-ha. We wake up laughing, and then there's an ah. As we sink, hearty laughter puts us in the heart. Ah. And that's where we want to be. If we want to be healthy, ah. When the doctor says, open your mouth and say, ah, you're already healthier when you're doing that. Ah, that is the sound of the heart. Now, interestingly, every chakra has a sound. And if we go up here to the head, it's E, it's E, it's E. The sound is E. We go down to the belly, it's O. And if we put a huh in front of that, that is a laughter sound. Ho, 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 ha, 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 he, he, right? Now, if we take that vowel sound and we move the sounds up and down, we actually increase the laugh force. So if you want to try this with me, it goes like this. Ho, 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 ha, 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 he, he, ha, 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 ho, 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 ha, 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 he, he. And you keep moving the vowel sound up and down your body until you feel more lively and laughly. And that's why I recommend every day a good vowel movement, once a day, just up and down. That will clear all of your chakras, including the clown chakra, by the way.
The clown chakra.
That's a red glow right around the nose. That's what it is.
Swami, I understand you're spearheading a movement you're calling the Great Upwising. Can you tell us about it?
Well, a little correction. I don't believe in spears. I am spearheading. I'm spearheading because I think this is all about sitting in circles. And as I said earlier, the Great Upwising. It is a 4-step program. Wake up, wise up, grow up, show up. Very simple, but not easy. Wake up to the illusion of separation. The illusion of separation. We've been divided and conquered. We've been put into these two tribes who are not allowed to talk with one another. And so as we emerge from that, we recognize that we leave being manipulated by love, by fear rather, and we move toward being motivated by love. This is part of the Great Upwising. And we leave this state of emergency to a state of emerge and see. And that takes us to step 2. We wise up to the power of love and unity. We wake up that see we've been separated, and we wise up to see that we're all connected. As Bruce Lipton would say, we're all cells in the same body called humanity. You know, our bodies are communities of 50 trillion cells. Did you know that? And everybody gets along. It's a fabulous community. We have universal health care, full employment, no cell left behind, and the organs cooperate with each other. You never hear about the liver invading the pancreas. Saying that we now claim the islets of Langerhans. It's not going to happen that way. And so we wise up to this power of love and unity, and we grow up. We grow upward in awareness from children of God to adults of good. Right now, we seem to be in this awkward phase called adult essence, because our essence has been addled by toxic beliefs, manipulation, and myth perceptions. And so as we become adults of good, we become, as I say earlier, independent, and we are able to grow up and grow upward in spiritual awareness. And the higher we go, by the way, levity takes you higher. Gravity is a downer. Levity lifts you up to see the bigger picture. And we see more things through levity. And so we grow upward, and finally we show up on a new playing field, ready to play a new game. And that game is we're all in this together. We leave dominate or be dominated, for we are all in this together. Thrival for each and all. Now, people might say, well, that sounds very utopian. Our body would call that health. So if we want to cultivate health rather than fighting illness, we actually begin to cultivate this new game on a new field where we are cooperating cells in one superorganism. We become humanity, or as I prefer calling it, humankind, because the currency of humankind is human kindness.
Would you tell us about mindfulness?
Mindfulness. Well, you know, living in this very, very hustly, bustly world and being inundated with information all the time, many of us are suffering from mindfulness. Mindfulness. And so the solution is to clear the mind through mindfulness. I went to a week-long silent mindfulness retreat. It was amazing. It was so quiet, you could hear an opinion drop. That's how quiet it was. And my great mindfulness teacher taught me the secret. He taught me the secret of mindfulness. He said, if you want to be mindful and peaceful, first thing you have to do is you have to clear your mind of all thoughts. Then you have to focus on the center of yourself. I did it and it worked. I am now thoughtless and self-centered. There you have it.
Have you achieved enlightenment?
Have I achieved enlightenment? Well, I have to tell you something. You know, you cannot tell who's been enlightened. It is an inner state. You cannot tell from the outside. Because you know the saying, before enlightenment, do the laundry. After enlightenment, do the laundry, but it's 40% brighter. That's the difference, I would tell. And I myself got struck by enlightening during a brainstorm. I guess I was in the right place at the right time.
Have you ever had a near-death experience?
Oh, yes, it was out of this world. No, actually, I worked in a cemetery, so I was near death quite a lot, and I felt this presence, this cold, chilling presence. I turned around very quickly. There was the presence of death. And the presence said, do not be concerned. It is not your time. You have much to do. And that's when I figured out the secret of long life and immortality. Procrastination. Procrastination. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. And so, and by the way, if anybody wants to know the secret to living to be 150, I have uncovered that. I have a new book coming out called How to Live to be 150 and Never Look a Day Over 100. And the secret is very simple. It is so simple that when you hear it, you'll go, why didn't I think of that? Foolproof way to live to be 150. Postpone your midlife crisis until you're 75. And stay away from those, what do they call it? Products that guarantee to make you younger. Stay away from that. There was a product several years ago that was guaranteed to make you 20 years younger. The FDA took it off the market. An 18-year-old took it and disappeared. So do it the natural way.
Good advice. Do you believe in reincarnation, Swami?
Oh, you know, I'm curious. I'm curious. Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe in it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, you know, it's great to see you again then, and again and again and again and again. And for those people who don't believe in reincarnation, don't worry. You will in your next lifetime. I am what they call a born again, 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 born again Krishna. Right? And this is really, it's a great philosophy. You only go around 60 million times, so grab the gusto. And we get to learn something from all of these past lives. Now, you and I have had significant past lives. And you probably remember, we were lamas in Tibet. Actually, you were a lama, I was a yak. A yak, by the way, is a talking llama. And actually, we sat at the feet of the Buddha. Is this coming back to you? Are you remembering this? The Buddha would sit to meditate. Every time he sit to meditate, you would interrupt him with a question. They named a city after you. Budapest. You could look it up in the Akashic record books. It's in there.
I see. What about synchronicities?
What about what?
Synchronicities.
Oh, you know, I believe that synchronicity is the magic of the universe. And I have had many synchronous moments. I've had a synchronous movement earlier today. I have many synchronous moments. In fact, the most amazing one of all, you will not believe this amazing synchronicity. A number of years ago, I was on the Today Show. And I went, oh my God, here I am on the Today Show, and it's today. That is a synchronicity.
Swami, what's your take on ascension?
Oh, ascension. Well, if we manage to ascend, we'll all go up in history. I think it's this is actually, it is an awareness. And I can feel the difference in consciousness emerging in me. And I ask myself every day, is this the fifth dimension or is it the first dementia? I'm not sure which.
So, trying to think of some questions on religion. For instance, do you believe in the second coming?
Well, I believe that the second coming is when that we are essentially the Messiah that we've been waiting for. And the second coming is when all of humanity comes together, finally, and the human comedy ends with a successful and a gratifying, satisfying climax. That is the second coming.
How do we release the grip of the ego?
The ego. Of course, I have already released my ego, and I take great pride in my humility. But I have come up with, I have discovered a simple 3-word mantra to help you release the grip of the ego. Ego, egoing, egon. There you go. And if that's too much for you, I would recommend mental floss twice a day. Clearing the mind. 4 out of 5 transcendentalists recommend mental floss for preventing truth decay.
What is your take, Swami, on extraterrestrials?
I have very strong opinions about extraterrestrials. We have way too many terrestrials. We don't need any extra.
Well, I understand you've discovered the ultimate solution, guaranteed to solve all problems. Can you share it with us?
This is huge. This is huge. I mean, think about this. What if I were to tell you that I have the ultimate solution to handle all of your problems? What is it that will handle all of your problems instantly? Nothing will. Nothing will. I have right here, nothing in a box. This is the ultimate enlightenment product, because no matter what your problem is, nothing will help. Did you know that nothing is known to cure baldness? Nothing gets out those impossible stains. Nothing is completely safe to eat. Nothing beats sex. And of course, nothing is made in the USA. A woman came to me, she said, Swami, nothing satisfies my husband. I said, terrific, buy him some. Now, as you can see, there's a hole in the box so you can see exactly how much nothing you have left. Up here, you got plenty of nothing. Down here, time to get more. And our slogan is, nothing is too good for your friends, but get it for them anyway. Now, we've expanded our product line. We now have, in addition to the box of nothing, we now have Swami's Ultimate Meditation Tape, completely blank. We call it the Sound of Silence. Premeditated by 1,000 Buddhist monks. And if you listen very carefully at the end, you can almost hear the sound of no hands clapping. We've expanded also into the area of health products. Now, I imagine that there's at least one person on this call who has environmental sensitivities, who has a problem with very strong smells and odors and so on. I have come up with the world's first completely odorless cologne. It's called Nonsense. Nonsense. This product makes no sense whatsoever. That's our slogan. So, Swami's Ultimate Meditation Tape, the box of nothing, nobody gives you less. It's the least I can do.
Swami, do you think there'll ever be peace on earth?
Well, people have asked me that before, and I've got really, really, really good news. There will indeed be peace on earth. I certainly hope we humans are around for it, yes? Because we seem to be in a race with time. Will we achieve critical mass before we get to critical massacre? That's very serious. And so during these times, we have to actually recognize, as we are learning, because we are becoming more spiritually aware, that the peace outside is a function of inner peace. So all of you people who've been cultivating inner peace, time to declare all out peace and let that peace all out. You know, we've been hearing for centuries, war is a necessary evil. We need to cultivate peace as a necessary good. And we need to metabolize the residue inside of us and form all of the toxic emotions that we feel. So I have developed a technique, I call it tantrum yoga. Tantrum yoga. Use your anger to heat your home in the wintertime. Tantrum yoga is where you hold your breath until God gives you what you want. How do you think Krishna turned blue? Want to be a blue Krishna without you. Blue, blue Krishna without you. I'm sorry. The jacket, I got the jacket at an Elvis convention. Every time I put it on, Elvis pops out. I can't help it. But you know, there is an Elvis religion, right? Presbyterianism. And they are one of those new light religions, same satisfying flavor, 1/3 the commandments. Because Elvis asks only 3 things of us. Love me tender, please surrender, return to sender. I was so impressed, I became an Elvis's witness. And every Saturday night, we go door to door proselytizing. We would ring the doorbell. They'd open the door. We'd say, "Are you lonesome tonight?" And people would go right to Graceland just from that. So it's very important that we cultivate inner peace, and that is how we change the world one heart at a time. So if you want the world to be peaceful, one of the secrets to being peaceful is to be positive. Be positive. I have a new program. It's called Just Say No to Negativity. Positively no negativity. And then the second practice is very challenging. This is a challenging spiritual practice. And that practice is, if you want to be peaceful, you have to bless everything. Bless everything. A driver cuts you off on the road, you have to bless that driver. Bless you. Bless you too. Go bless yourself. It really works. I tried it last week. I tried it. The other driver actually gave me half of a peace sign. Very, very powerful. And so that is how we have to cultivate this peace. We have to listen to the language we are using. We listen to the language. You know, we have a beautiful national anthem, but why are we affirming bombs bursting in there? And what is it with these watching ramparts? I think looking at ramparts is pretty perverse. I don't care how gallantly they're screaming. I don't want to see those ramparts. All the ones that should be looking at ramparts are sheep, right? Because we humans have been ramming parts for far too long, and all of this rutting has gotten us into a rut. Yeah, because when you just have aggressive male energy in a system, you know what you have? Stagnation. Stagnation. We need to balance it out by letting the feminine make a donation. And together, we can actually achieve imagination, the unused tool in the toolkit. So that is the secret. If we want things to be better, we have to first be able to imagine them being better. My guru, Hari Khan Baba, the Garment Center saint, used to say that life is like a good deli. Even if something isn't on the menu, if enough people order it, they have to make it. So that is why we want to, if you don't like the current programming, turn off your TV, television instead. That's where I television to you, you television to me. And then we have healing and functional visions to step into, and that beats what we've been stepping into. Very important. So I'll television. I call it non-judgment day. Non-judgment day. On non-judgment day, everybody will win a beauty contest. On non-judgment day, all of the lawyers will disappear. Our trials will be over. We won't need them. They can go to the beach or go play golf. On non-judgment day, all of the nations at the United Nations begin their sessions with the hokey pokey. Imagine. The Israelis and Palestinians, they put their whole selves in. That is commitment. They pull their whole selves out. That is detachment. They turn themselves around. That is transformation. And that's what it's all about.
What is your secret to happiness? Why do you seem to be so happy all the time?
Well, I learned my secret for happiness. I learned it from a great psychiatrist who I met. And he was the happiest man I ever met. He'd been practicing as a psychiatrist for almost 50 years. Almost 50 years. I said, How can you spend 50 years listening to people's problems and look as happy as you do? He says, who listens? So if you think that taking a vow of silence is going to make you happy, that could help, but try not listening. That will really make you happy.
Mm-hmm. Swami, how do you explain the suffering of all the people in the world who don't have enough to eat?
Well, you know, that is easy to explain. What's harder to explain is the suffering in the world of all the people who have plenty to eat. And this self-imposed suffering and unhappiness, because we put happiness outside of ourselves. And we learn to be envious of people we might think are happier than we are. And Sigmund Freud, of course, called this happiness envy. Happiness envy. Somebody's happiness might be bigger than mine. And so we have to recognize that happiness is an inside job. We cultivate it by using the levitational pull. But like this, we just let our mouth do this. Upward in the levity, have levitational pull you down, because I pull you up because gravity is a downer. And what this does is it actually changes the body chemistry. When you do this, change the muscles, your body thinks you're happy, and you have this happy hormones circulating through your body. That is the secret. So we don't smile because we're happy because we smile.
Good advice. Swami, I understand you have mastered time travel. How can I learn to do that?
Oh, you can take my time travel workshop. I'm offering it last weekend. It's called Be There Then.
Ah. Well, Swami, can you leave us with a song?
I could leave you with a song, but I'm just wondering if any people out there have any questions. You know, if there's something that's been puzzling you, ask the Swami and have it puzzle both of us. So if there's somebody out there with a question, I'm happy to address that.
So I'm going to unmute all. However,
if people can raise their hand, there's a
yeah, you may have to. I noticed when I click unmute all, it doesn't unmute all. So if you want to ask a question, just unmute your mic.
Hi, Gail.
Swami. Hello, Swami.
Now I get to see you after all of this correspondence.
I know. I want to know what's going on with the Supreme Court.
Well, what's going on with the Supreme Court is we don't need another Supreme Court justice. We need a Supreme Court jester. Because everything has been taken way, way, way too seriously. And what we actually need is a full court press, so that we actually press the court to be responsive to the needs of we the people and not they the corporations, which seems to be how they've been going lately. Bless Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's been following the Bee Gees song, staying alive, staying alive, staying alive, which is good, If she can hang out for a while, that would be fabulous if she could do that. So, but I think that, again, this time the body politic needs to act as one coherent force to de-elect the current misleader who got elected by mistake. And let's face it, what happened at the last election was we had to choose between the lesser of two evils. And as I traveled across the country in 2016, the question that people were asking was, so, who are you voting against? And so that's what that election was about. It was about who did you dislike more? And it's quite a testimonial to Hillary that she was disliked more than Donald Trump was. We need to bring the people of this country together and have a conversation, a respectful, loving conversation that focuses on what do we all want together. There was a moment about 3 years ago this summer, and there was a family caught in the riptide off of the coast of Florida. And they were drowning, and the people on the beach made a human chain to reach these people and pull them to safety. And I guarantee that in the midst of doing that, nobody asked somebody next to them, hey, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Instead of the current tug of war, we had a tug of peace where everybody is pulling together in the same direction. In the program I am doing on a new website called Mobilized, mobilized.com, M-O-B-I-L-I-Z-E-D. In the fall, it's going to be called Reset Humanity. And that's one of the questions we are going to be asking, is how we can create a tug of peace. We're all pulling for the things that the 90% of us who are not sociopaths would like.
You know, I've been wanting to ask you this question for a long time. What, in your view, is the meaning of life?
Oh, the meaning of life. Now, you got to be specific. Are you talking about the magazine or the cereal? No, actually, people ask me that all the time, and I'll tell you what I've gleaned from all this. The reason why people ask, what is the meaning of life? They want to know, why is life so contrary? What is the meaning of this? That's what people want to know. They want to know, why is it that bad things happen to good people? And I'll tell you, I think I figured it out. God is dyslexic. And I take some comfort in having a God that is not perfect, right? It's like the story about the priest and the Monsignor who are playing golf. And every time the priest hits a bad shot, he yells, damn it, I missed. And the Monsignor at some point gets very upset. He says, you're taking the Lord's name in vain. And finally, after doing this several times, the priest is so contrite. He says, if I say that again, may I be struck down. Well, they keep playing, and the priest hits one in the lake. He says, damn it, I missed. And a lightning bolt comes out of the sky and hits the Monsignor. And there's a loud and thunderous voice that says, damn it, I missed. So negative things are going to happen in life. So my philosophy is very simple. Life is like photography, use the negative to develop.
Somebody in the chat wrote a question. Do you have any advice for insomnia?
Just sleep it off. It's like procrastination. Next time you get the urge to procrastinate, put it off. That's all. Many problems are very, very simple. And people ask me really questions about very simple problems. Somebody came to me with a phobia. Seriously, a phobia. This person had a fear of mimes. A fear of mimes. I have a fear of mimes. What should I do? Simple. Close your eyes. That's all. Okay, more questions.
Do you want to ask your question?
We need a question.
Come here. Come and ask him. My son wants to know how long you've been doing this.
Oh, I've been doing this for lifetimes. Lifetimes and lifetimes I've been doing this for a long time. Ever since I got struck by lightning during a brainstorm and I achieved fool realization, I realized I'm a fool. And if you're a fool, you invite the entire world to laugh at you. Because as the old saying goes, laugh at yourself and the whole world will laugh at you too. So I've been doing this for a number of years. In fact, he's too young to understand this, but I just celebrated my 33 and a third anniversary, which is my vinyl anniversary. And so I am long playing. You got it. That's good. Explain it to the young man. Okay. Any more questions, or I can sing my song?
There's another one on the chat box.
Okay. What did that chatterbox say?
What do you think can help accelerate the world's spiritual growth?
Oh, what will accelerate the world's spiritual growth? Well, I would say that in the past 4 years or less, thanks to our current president, the world's spiritual growth has accelerated greatly. Because more people are praying. More people are praying. Help me, help us, so help me God, so help me God. More people are praying because of this. You know, it's like, it's very much like the story of the very famous, well-known minister who dies and goes to heaven. He arrives at the pearly gates at the same time as a cab driver from New York. They let the cab driver right into the pearly gates. The minister's waiting outside and waiting and waiting. Finally, he calls the attending angel over. He says, "Excuse me, I'm a world-renowned minister. How come you let this cab driver in and I'm waiting out there?" And the angel said, "Well, that's simple. When you preached, everybody slept. But when he drove, everybody prayed." So pray it forward.
Even the atheists are praying these days.
I'm telling you, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. But you see, that is really the secret. The secret is everybody finding their truth, their sense of oneness and love beyond religion and non-religion. It's bigger than any religion, that oneness. It's like, if I'm one, you're one too. That is a new philosophy. And so I'm going to end with a song. I have a song to sing. And since people have been thinking about peace and changing the world, and by the way, there's no need to change the world. There's a better way. I say, let's toilet train the world. We'll never have to change it again. I'm going to offer my song for peace. Now, I have to say, I travel on the higher planes all the time. And on a higher plane, you never know who you're going to be sitting next to. I'm sitting next to this guy who looks very, very familiar. I said, "You look very familiar." He says, "Yes, I'm George Gershwin." He said, "George Gershwin, she said, "George Gershwin." I said, "Oh, George Gershwin, the composer." He says, "That's right." I said, "Oh my God, what are you doing these days?" He says, "Decomposing." But he said he was watching very carefully what was happening on this planet, and he was very concerned about the Middle East. And the Israelis and the Palestinians, they speak almost the same language. They're like cousins, and yet they can't seem to make peace to save their lives. And so he offered a song for peace in the Middle East, and I will channel this George Gershwin song for you. It goes like this. You say salam, and I say shalom. You throw a bomb, I blow up your home. Salam, shalom, we blow up our home. Let's call the old thing off. You say baraka, I say baruka. I spin the dreidel, you toke the hookah. Baruka, baraka, this warfare, it's kaka. Let's call the old thing off. And oh, if we call the old thing off, we'll all be right. And so, if we are all right, well, there's no need to fight. I eat the kasha, you eat the kibbe. We both dig falafel, but never pork ribby. To kasha, to kibbe, forget the pork ribby. At least there's one thing we agree on. Haven't we had enough? Let's call the old thing off, oh yeah. Let's call the old thing off, uh-huh. Let's call the old thing off. That's all, folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Namaste and namasko. Thank you.
And now we're
going to get ready for part 2.
Yes.
And my alter ego, who has never been seen in the same room at the same time with me, Steve Bhaerman, will be showing up in about 3 minutes. So if you need to, somebody asked me very recently about how what's my take on gender fluidity? And I say, it's very simple. The fluid comes out the front, you're one gender. If it comes out the bottom, you're another. And so if you want to practice any kind of fluidity, this would be a time for taking a chance, maybe for about 3 minutes while I change my outfit. Thank you. May the farce be with you.
Thank you so much, Swami.
Thank you. Question. We have one. This is the encore. You have a question. What is your question?
How does the cow jump over the moon?
How did the cow jump over the moon? Well, that is one of those questions. That is what they call an unanswerable question. It's like a Zen koan designed to stop the mind. And you succeeded in stopping my mind by asking that question. Actually, I think that they gave this cow a special. They gave the cow a special treatment, or they lowered the moon. I think just for that time they lowered the moon. Are you buying that? Okay, that's good. You're a quick sale. What is your name?
Briar.
Thank you so much for being on the call, and we'll see you soon. So part 2 of the program, I'm back and my other guys, and we can, you can ask some questions and everybody else can, we can open the conversation up.
I'll ask a question. Besides your comic side as Swami Beyondananda, you also have a serious side as well, as evidenced by the book you wrote with Bruce Lipton, Spontaneous Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that book?
I don't know how many people know Bruce Lipton. He's a really well-known cellular biologist who wrote a book called Biology of Belief, which is really a world-changing book. One of the best, probably the best-selling self-published book of its time. And his idea was that as a biologist, he studied what he called epigenetics, which is how our environment, including our beliefs, perceptions, feelings, and thoughts, impact our physiology, our lives, and our health. And I met Bruce about 15 years ago, and we started a conversation that applied the principles of biology of belief to our collective beliefs. How do our collective beliefs, how did they give us what we have right now? And so that book is really a study of history from how different belief systems created different realities, and puts us, as I said earlier in the Swami guys, that we are at this point of great crisis and opportunity for evolution, because the beliefs that we've been living by, scientific materialism or fundamentalist religion, both are incomplete narratives. And so we need to bring together a new narrative that takes us from the power of fear that we've been living by to the power of love and connection. And so that's really the focus of Spontaneous Evolution. And it's the book that talks about the next phase of human evolution, is recognizing that we're cells in this body called humanity, and that much of what we've been doing until now has been autoimmune dysfunction. One of the very helpful metaphors, nature metaphors, that we use in the book is the transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And here we are. We are right in the midst of the chrysalis, and it's very chaotic, and caterpillar debris is falling everywhere. You know, they call these times apocalyptic, and apocalypse means the lifting of the veils, and the veils are being lifted on many, many things, on a lot of toxic perpetrations, on secrets of centuries, and also on spiritual paths that have been kept in protective custody. So in a way, in this is a very rich time in which, as the caterpillar debris is falling, as all of the deconstructing is going on, there are these butterfly cells that are beginning to connect, and they're actually called imaginal cells. Imaginal cells. So as we use our imagination for the future that has not come yet, but which we know is possible, that is the first step in bringing these imaginal cells together in coherent conversation and community. And that's a short form of what Spontaneous Evolution is about.
I remember in his book, Biology of Belief, that we studied in a study group at Cart. He talked about how, it might have even been in the introduction, I don't remember, but he talked about how we have identified, you know, historically or through the ages, we have, in our evolution, we've identified in bigger and bigger ways. So we started out identifying with just our own family, our, you know, kind of nuclear family, and then it was the tribe, and then it was the village or the clan, and then it was the village, and then it was the nation state, and then it was a country, and then it was, you know, and he said, once we identify as a whole globe, which is the next step after, you know, what, continents, right? That then we'll be ready to meet others from other planets, right? We'll be able to, I thought that was a pretty cool analysis of our readiness. I mean, we know that there are other civilizations, right? But we haven't met them collectively yet. And I thought that was...
We haven't cultivated the mature awareness is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's very interesting because there's a concept, I think it was created by Arthur Kessler, called holon, H-O-L-O-N. And a holon is something that has a smaller component and a bigger component, kind of like Russian nesting dolls, a smaller one, a smaller one, a smaller one, each inside. Well, if you look at where we are right in the middle of scale. On a grand scale, there's billions of stars, billions of light years away, way out there. It's too big for us to imagine. On the small scale, there's the most infinitesimal of particles. And so we have to recognize that those small particles are a part of us. The subatomic particles, the atoms, the molecules, the cells, the organs, the body, the tribe, the country, the world, humanity, the web of life, and on and on and on. And as we gain spiritual wisdom, as a critical mass of us gain spiritual wisdom and recognize that this is all a connected thing, we will begin to see ourselves as part of this bigger cosmos and recognize that, as the Swami said, each of us is totally unique, just like everybody else. And as we start to get that our purpose, that each of us has a singular and unique purpose, there is no one like us. There is no other human being like us. And so that part of recognizing, simultaneously having the humility to see how big things are, and also having the self-esteem to recognize that we're part of this, and without that part, the world would be incomplete. Another analogy that Bruce uses, I think it's in Spontaneous Evolution, is that if you look at white light, it consists of every color spectrum on the spectrum, every color on the spectrum. If one sliver of color is removed, there's no white light. So everybody and everything that's part of this matrix is necessary to have what we have. And we are conscious right now. Bruce, in our update to Spontaneous Evolution, Bruce says conscious evolution is the alternative to mass extinction. And in order for us to make the passage to the next level of organization, how we organize ourselves, not from the top down, not from the World Health Organization sending down a dictate that everybody has to wear masks, not like that kind of a dictate, but rather a realization that comes from the ground up. And we recognize that we are all in this together. And if we are all in it together, how do we adjust our behavior? How do we change the institutions of society to encompass that reality? And that's why this is such an exciting time, because we're recognizing the incompleteness of the paradigms that we've been living by and how this new paradigm is so desperately needed. And the imaginal selves, like the people on this call, are reaching to connect with one another to build this thing.
Yeah, I remember there was a video that Barbara Marx Hubbard made that we showed several years ago at the center, quite a few years ago. And she talked about those imaginal cells on the caterpillar. Do you remember that? Did you see that? And she called them imaginal discs because they're little discs that form on the outside of the caterpillar. Mm-hmm. And she said that when the first disc appears, mm-hmm. the immune system of the caterpillar doesn't recognize it as its own body, and mm-hmm. so it kills it. Mm-hmm. And then another one appears, and it shoots that one down. It kills that one. And then another one appears, and another one appears, another one appears, and finally these discs proliferate to the point where they overwhelm the immune system. And these discs, the reason they call them imaginal discs is because somehow they hold the pattern for the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. And so it's when finally the immune system is overwhelmed and the discs just take over that the caterpillar can turn into the butterfly. And she used it as an analogy. She said, the imaginal discs of our time are people like Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and Gandhi, and, you know, who hold the pattern of what we need to become. This butterfly that we need to become. And they've been shot down in the same way that the imaginal discs do. But as more and more of us believe in their message and their understanding and their truth, as more and more of us hold this vision, we will proliferate and overwhelm the immune system of the planet that, you know, or humanity, or
of the toxic system that's outlived its uselessness. We call it obsolete and obsolethal because it's deadly to the web of life and the web of love. You know, and Bruce has also talked about that metaphor that one of my bad jokes, it's a joke that's not funny, is that in the late 1960s and early 1970s, the KKK was replaced by the KKK, which was Kill Kennedy, King Kennedy, and the Kent kids.
Wow.
And that was the snuffing out of those first imaginal cells.
Yeah.
That kind of put us back in the darkness. You know, and you know, the imaginal cells emerged again in the 1990s when the Berlin Wall came down, and we're still in the throes of this, of the caterpillar resisting. Having a sense of inevitability about it is really a very positive thing, mm-hmm. because most successful social movements recognize that it wasn't going to happen overnight, that it's a long process. And so people like Martin Luther King, particularly those who had spiritual perspective, who recognized that the physical world is not the be-all and the end-all, have a sense of this continuity and the immortality of love and the immortality of that kind of energy, meaning that it's an endless supply of it that we can call on at any time. And when that coherence overwhelms the coherent negative, you know, for example, if you look at Trumpism, it's coherent in that there's a very strong minority of people who hold these views very strongly. They hold these views very rigidly, very intensely. And because there's so much nebulous belief systems out there in competition with one another, that belief system took hold and was able to take power in 2016. So now, as Marianne Williamson has suggested, we need to have a coherent, love-based power that is more powerful than that overgrows that power, that is much more about what do we want to create together rather than what we oppose. And unfortunately, so much of political activity is fighting against something. Now, of course, the immune system fights against disease and defeats disease. And I think that we need to excise the malignancy from the White House in this upcoming election. But then the next question is, now that we've dealt with the cancer, how do we deal with the heart disease that's been part of our, not just our country, but our species for thousands of years, where we have acceded to dominate or be dominated, where even people who believe in peace and are working for peace in the environment, their DNA and programming is still influenced by this old programming. It's like the joke, a sign that world peace is at hand is when all of the peace groups get along with each other, right? So even the people who have the consciousness of working for something, even there's still that gap between what they imagine could be possible and the grounded in reality realization that, yes, I can live my life so that that will come about eventually.
Do you see a relationship between humor and evolution?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there is a relationship.
Yeah.
Because...
Are you ready?
Huh?
Come on.
Somebody's got...
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, anyway, I'll answer your question. There is a relationship between evolution and humor because evolution really involves overgrowing the dueling dualities that we have right now. Right now, we're stuck in this. The reason why there's such great polarization is to really point out so that everybody sees. We call it pumping ironies in humor. Pumping ironies. You take something that is ironic, that is contradictory, that's paradoxical, and you use exaggeration to bring it to consciousness so that nobody can mistake it. There's no mistake about what it is. So our current president, he is a caricature. He's a caricature. You can't do humor about him because he himself is this larger-than-life negative paradoxical figure. So what needs to happen right now is that there needs to be a new unifying understanding that encompasses both of these realities. Humor does that. You ever wonder why jokes come in threes? A minister, a priest, and a rabbi. A minister, a priest, and a rabbi are discussing their legacy. How do they want to be remembered? What do they want the eulogist to be saying when they're laying in their casket? And the minister says, well, I want them to be saying he was a family man and a pillar of his community. The priest said, I want them to be saying he was a holy man and a leader of his flock. The rabbi says, I want them to be saying, look, I think he's breathing. So comedy always points us to a third way. And I'll give you another example about how it breaks the trance of separation. A number of years ago, I was doing a presentation at a health conference, and I was talking about irony deficiency. Seeing a doctor won't help us seeing a paradox will. And it's about these contradictions that we accept as reality because we don't examine them. And I used as an example people who call themselves pro-life but believe in the death penalty. So after the program, this woman came up to me and she was very upset because she identified as pro-life. And she was very angry that I apparently disrespected her viewpoint. And I started telling her a story, and she didn't know I was telling her a story. I said, well, you know, there's a TV show with 3 religious experts, a minister, a priest, and a rabbi. A minister, a priest, and a rabbi. And they were discussing when life begins. And the priest said, life begins at conception. And the woman shaking her head, yes, that's what I believe. Doesn't know I'm telling her a story. The minister said, life begins when the baby takes the first breath, and she's shaking her head, no. Then they said, Rabbi, when does life begin? Rabbi says, life begins when the children leave home and the dog dies. And this woman, in spite of herself, burst out laughing, and she hugged me. And it was breaking the trance of separation through absurdity, because I have to tell you something. Most arguments are absurd. Most arguments are the ego trying to defend itself. And when my wife Trudy and I have, whenever we have a disagreement, and it starts to get intense, it happens from time to time, one of us will say, it's time to step off the battlefield. Battlefield is a place where an ego says, I'm going to be right. And the other one has to say, but I wasn't done being right yet. And then that breaks the trance, because that's what it's all about. Think about any argument you ever have with anybody. You're having an argument with somebody on Facebook about politics. It's only about being right, only about being right. So, Swami's all-purpose argument ender is, you're absolutely right, and so am I. Because Trudy and I often discover, after a disagreement, we're both right. We're both right. And it's that either we didn't hear what the other person said, or we didn't actually include their being right in the big picture. When you see the big, oh yeah, that's right too. Yeah. That's right too. Oh yeah, I'm right, you're right. That's right too. And so part of the purpose of humor is to trick the mind into allowing for unity rather than being stuck in the dueling duality polarities. And it's done in a very surprising and delightful way.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that nothing is ever resolved until it's a win-win. And unfortunately, if we come from the heart, it has to be a win-win. Because if it's good for me, it's got to be good for you, and vice versa. Yeah. The other person may not necessarily agree that it's a win-win, but I have to know in my heart that it's a win-win, right?
Exactly.
And we have a so-called justice system that is always based on a win-lose. Right. And that's why I think, we need something like restorative justice, or, peace and reconciliation, where everyone can have their say and heal instead of punish.
One of the most successful prison programs, and we talk about this in Spontaneous Evolution, was run by a Native American in upstate New York. And as you probably know, the recidivism rates in prisons are high. 70% of people get returned to prison. This program had a recidivism rate more like 15%. And what he did was he taught respect. First thing is he taught respect. Respect for self, respect for others, respect for the web of life and the web of love. And people who are not respectful have very often been disrespected, treated horribly, treated disrespectfully as children. And so the first step was creating a sense of respect. The second was telling everybody, there's something that you are here to do in the positive way on this planet. And if you don't do it, nobody else will do it. Those were the people who did not return to prison, because they recognized, first of all, that they were respected and loved, number one. Number two, that they had something that was theirs to do, that was unique, that made them special. No more special than anybody else, but no less special than anybody else. We've had this punishment reward system based on the notion of original sin, and it's time to release that. It's time to release the blame and shame game, which always creates an imbalance. I met somebody a number of years ago named Johan Galtung at a conference in Europe, Galtung, and he was a world-famous negotiator. And he came up with something called the fifth way. And, one way, of course, is I win, you lose. Another way is you win, I lose. Another way is we compromise and we each lose a little bit. Another way is we ignore and deny the whole situation, so that it becomes a big loss eventually. But the fifth way is finding exactly what you were talking about, Gloria, at the beginning, which is finding a way where everybody wins. And one of the negotiations he did, this was two countries in Central America, and I'm not remembering what they were, which way they were, but there was a contentious border dispute where they've actually had armies amassed at the border. How did they solve this border dispute? What they did, thanks to Johann Galtung and his wisdom, they turned that piece of land into question as a international national park that was run by the two countries together. And that land became co-governed as a special place. And that's how they handled that, that conflict, by making it a win-win. Nobody lost, everybody won. And I think that there's a shift in consciousness where we have to also begin to forgive ourselves and stop blaming ourselves, and then we won't need to blame other people either.
Yeah. Yeah. I read once about a tribe somewhere in Africa, and I don't remember where, that had a process whenever someone did something really heinous, they would put that person in the middle of a circle, and they would just all be sitting in the circle, and they would start reminding the person of all the good things that he or she had done.
Yeah.
You know, when my child broke his leg falling out of a tree, you carried him home to me, and when this happened, you did this, and this can go on for days until that person has a change of heart and recognizes his own worth, because the premise is he's forgotten who he is, or she.
Right. What an excellent story.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true, because that's really, when people act out, they're really acting in. There's really something in there.
Yeah.
That the more we learn, the more we see that our inordinate responses to things out there have a lot less to do with what's going on in the present moment than they have with the memories that are re-stimulated that we react against. And when we do something like forgiveness, I work with a brilliant teacher, Leonard Laskow, in helping him write his book, Forgiving Love. And it's really about the power of forgiveness. And when you forgive, it's not really even about the other person. You're simply freeing yourself from the prison of being in this negative state with that person. You're complete with it. And once you've done that, what happens physiologically is that the memory moves from the amygdala part of the brain, where we have our emotional reactions, to the hippocampus, or as we call it, the hippocampus part of the brain, where it simply becomes a memory that we can use and we've learned from. That's emotionally neutral. So once that emotion is neutralized, our goat can't be gotten. We're not going to react to that, because we are no longer, we're complete with it. It's not there in our psyche as an incomplete. You know, a lot of these things, it's almost like chemistry, where there's a valence, where there's an element where there's a couple of elements, there are a couple of electrons short, and there's another one where there are a couple of electrons long, and they just bond together because one needs what the other has. And when you were talking about the need for a win, that's kind of like the resolution at the end of a joke. It's kind of like the resolution at the end of a piece of music. We all know when a piece of music ends because the note is resolved. It's resolved in a completion, full circle, so that things are completely balanced, and then that's the end of that song until we play it again. Mm-hmm. So what you're looking at is the way that, the reason why we have something like Black Lives Matter right now, 150 years after the fact, and 50 years after I grew up in the ghetto in a black neighborhood, and same exact things were happening then that are not resolved. It's because, for various reasons, people on all sides in this conversation in this country have withheld completion. People have benefited from the inequity, and people have also benefited from having the victim story. And so the new realization is that we need to overgrow this complete conversation. It's an obsolete conversation. And we need to take the focus from identity issues to identical issues. Everybody wants clean air, clean water, clean food, clean soil, clean government. And we haven't had that because the focus has been on identity issues. And this has been a detriment to our political system. It's a necessary phase, but we're coming to the end of that phase because it creates separation. Rather than recognizing that every group, even those who have been dominated, like Native American people and black people have been dominated more than white people, everybody has been subject to domination. It's in our DNA. It's in your DNA, my DNA, whether we're white, black, yellow, green, or whatever. And the real issue is the human resolution of choosing collectively, en masse, to no longer live in a dominate or be dominated world. That's the great uprising.
Yeah, there was a man named Fred Hampton who was leader of the Black Panther Party, and he said, you don't fight racism with racism, you fight it with unity, or you resolve it with unity.
And he was one of the first to be killed of the Black Panthers. Yes. You know, this is very interesting because the most dangerous thing to the system in its current form is somebody trying to bring people together. As a kid, I was privileged to see Malcolm X when he came to speak at Brooklyn College in New York after he came back from his trip to Mecca, where he recognized that this issue of religion and love transcended race. He started seeing Muslims of all colors. Then he began to recognize, wait a minute, this whole color scheme is a pigment of our imagination. And he didn't live very long after that. He didn't live very long after that. So the most dangerous thing that can happen until now, because of how we've been kept ignorant and separate in our silos, and progressives are as ignorant as the conservatives. They just need to be lied to in a more sophisticated way. Until we recognize that we've been put into these camps and silos that's designed to keep us from speaking with one another, we will be subject to divide and conquer, which is why we're in the situation that we're in now. And the more that we're able to unify around these common virtues and values, you know, if we could just sing together, if we could just simply harmonize together, if we could sing Amazing Grace together, millions of people at the same time, if we were to do Om, if we were to sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat, it would be the same thing, because we would be conspiring, breathing together, singing together, chanting together, and recognizing that there is a one voice that humanity can speak in. Once that happens, all of these detriments go bye-bye.
Yeah. Carl Jung said, if you want peace in the world, everyone has to own their shadow.
Yes.
Which gets projected when we don't acknowledge it. And I was thinking not too long ago about economic inequities. And I thought, what is it about having to grow all the time? You know, having to grow the economy all the time. And it occurred to me that it's a projection because we as humans have an innate need to grow, right? To grow inwardly. To grow, to evolve, to progress, right? And when that doesn't happen, we project it onto the material world and we say, oh, well, the economy has to grow, you know. I don't have to grow. The outside has to grow. We externalize it, right?
What a great, that's really a great thought. That really is very important because, again, the outer is a reflection of the inner. And, we say that you can grow in happiness while using less, and experiencing sufficiency and safety and sufficiency in such a way that all of this, acquiring this and acquiring that, and all of the things that we are told that we need in order to be who we already are. And that's part of the awakening that's taking place. And it's happening, in the context of a civilization that's still addicted to this materialism. I think part of it, this is Bruce and I talk about this in Spontaneous Evolution, is that, paradigms change. We started out with animism, which is the native people, they're all one with everything. There's no difference between me and nature. I'm part of this whole thing. And then we went to pantheism, where there's many gods, and there's gods for each of these forces. And then we went to monotheism. And, the forces of conservatism right now are in that patriarchal monotheistic paradigm. And that was challenged by the paradigm of science, by Newton and by Galileo and by Descartes, that made the material world more real. Well, what's happened in the few hundred years since science and religion got a divorce is that these two forces have been duking it out with one another. And with the primacy of scientific materialism, we're godless. There is no spirit. There's no belief in anything beyond the physical world. And so money, matter, and the machine have become the God that we've worshipped. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at a society where our healthcare system is only based on money. How crazy is that? It's insane. It's insane. And so part of going sane is recognizing these contradictions in the institutions in our society that have replaced spiritual growth and growth of happiness, growth of being able to give your gift in the world, to acquiring things, making money, and growing the economy.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to restore the economy and renew the economy without producing and extracting. We need to move from the 4 E's, which are extraction, exploitation, extortion, and extinction, to the 4 C's, which are cooperation, collaboration, community, and cultivation. So instead of extracting from nature, we're cultivating. We're in a symbiotic relationship with nature. We're like the native peoples. We look 7 generations up and 7 generations back to help us make a decision about what we're doing right this minute.
Yeah, thank you. You have a background in political science. What do you think about how do you make sense politically?
This is true. My major was political science. Although I have to confess, I never got quite so far in the field to actually dissect a politician. I never did that. Poli-sci lab, never got quite that far. But I'm aware of the certain principles that I learned that we can apply right now. One principle is absolute power corrupts. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when the founders of this country created the balance of powers, they were looking for ways to make sure that no one branch of the government had absolute power. But what they didn't take into consideration, back in those days, corporations had to have their charter renewed every certain number of years, and corporations were very limited. As part of their charter, they had to be public benefit. But in 1886, thanks to corruption and the railroad industry, somebody who was working for a railroad company was working as a clerk at the Supreme Court. And in a preamble to the Supreme Court decision, he essentially asserted that corporations have the right of humans. Mm-hmm. And so this is a completely bogus idea that became the law of the land through precedent. And so now what we have is an unchecked, unbalanced, unmitigated power of money in politics. Right. In order to run for Senate again 6 years from now, a senator has to raise something like $6,000 a day. Imagine that. Where's that money going to come from? From the people who already have money, or it gets extorted from poor folks like us. Send me $3, send me $3, send me $3. When actually, in reality, the political system works so that if there's something that all the people of this country want, and it's contradictory to what the corporate entities and the people who really rule the country want, it doesn't happen. So my latest project that I'm working to support is something called National Town Square, which is a new institution of society that provides advisory voting for all citizens of this country who sign up for an account. It's totally transparent, non-corporate, non-governmental, no ads, no bots. Nothing is done with your information. The only thing that, the only information they glean is your zip code. And you get a chance to vote as an independent citizen, as an advisory vote on any issue that's up. Imagine what would happen when 20 or 40 or 50 or 60 million Americans speak in one voice saying, we want this. That is what overgrows the power of money, because at that point, those running for office will have to listen to that voice. Mm-hmm. We will also begin to recognize the power that we have. 90% of people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, independents, believe that there's too much money in politics. But because the entire political system runs on money, it's called a political industrial complex, runs on money. They can't make that change from the inside, and that's why it's up to an independent institution of society. So I am working with Richard Lang, who wrote the book Virtual Country, our other associate, Lupton Apshire, and we're looking to launch this in 2021. Imagine what would happen if America's people could speak in one voice. We want this.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody have any questions, comments? I can ask, do you think that anyone can use the power of humor to shift their perspective?
Absolutely. You know, this is it's one of these things where the biggest issue that we all have, is that we're on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. And that we've learned through habit that our ego wants to be right. Our ego wants to be right. And it's really interesting that the words humor, humility, humus, and human all have the same root. Mm. So when we're able to laugh at ourselves, we are able to cultivate humility without being humiliated. Mm-hmm. Abraham Lincoln was a genius at this. He was in a debate. His opponent called him two-faced. He said, if I had two faces, why would I be using this one? And laughter disarms. When I was a kid, I spent my deformative years in New York. My religion was baseball. I love baseball. And one of the great baseball characters from New York, and when I was a kid, was Casey Stengel. He was the manager of the Yankees. True story about Casey Stengel. When he was a rookie, the fans in New York disliked him for some reason. And every time he would step onto the field, he would get booed. All the time. So one particular day, he steps to the plate to bat. The fans boo him. He tipped his cap, and a little sparrow flew out from under his cap. And everybody in the ballpark stood up and cheered.
Wow.
And they never booed him again. So, of course, the moral is, if you're going to flip somebody the bird, make it a real bird. And so I've always held that story as a way of embracing when there is a sense of disagreement or conflict, if you're being criticized and so on, and it's unjust. What would happen if you actually expanded rather than contracted? And that's what he did. He expanded. He created a sense of defenselessness. Humor is the same way. I was once involved in a very awful, contentious negotiation with a publisher. And finally, I just hung up the phone. I couldn't stand it anymore. And Trudy, my wife, walked in. She said, "What's the matter?" I said, what a horrible conversation. And I remembered when I was a kid in New York, and we were playing on the playground, there was this phenomena called do-over. We said, "I'm calling a do-over." There was interference, do-over. So I said, I'm going to call a do-over. So I called her back. I said, "Hi, this is Steve Bhaerman. Did somebody just call you impersonating me?" And she laughed, and we did the negotiation. It all worked out as a win-win.
Wow, isn't that great? Yeah.
So humor helps us create defenselessness, where we recognize how much energy we use defending the ego when we don't need to do that.
Right. A lot of people find their calling at a turning point in their lives. Is that what happened to you?
Yes, as a matter of fact. Whenever we say a funny thing happened, sometimes it's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, as a kid, I loved humor. I was the kid who would disrupt a class and get a 0. And you know that you're chosen for that, right? You know that's your path. The first time you're in the lunchroom and you make another kid laugh so hard that milk comes out of their nose. That is a universal sign from God, right? And I tried to get serious. I went to school in New York. You get to skip the 8th grade. So I graduated high school at 16, socially retarded. I'm in college and I'm trying to blend in. I don't want to make any waves. I'm going to be serious. So I'm in a sociology lecture hall with about 250 other very bored individuals. I'm in the state somewhere between sleep and deep sleep. And out of the corner of my ear, I heard a professor who was talking about social mores. And she says, "And who can define for us mores?" And without even thinking, I stand up and in kind of a comedic Tourette's, what comes out is, "When the moon hits your eye like a big piece of pie, that's amore." I did that. Everybody laughed, except the professor, who gave me a D.
Oh.
I was running a B until then, but she gave me a D in the class just for that. But I earned a D. And I went on to become a teacher in Washington, D.C. I started an alternative high school, ended up teaching labor history at Wayne State University in Detroit. Funny thing happened. I had my dream job. I get laid off from my job. Because they had tenured professors, which I wasn't one, and they had to put their tenured professors in the spot. The only job I could take that I could get, because I had lived on a farm and knew how to operate heavy equipment, was working for the City of Ann Arbor Department of Parks and Forestry, taking down trees that had Dutch elm disease. This is back in the 70s. Now, true story. This is how humor gets created. My Jewish mother, bless her heart, she's worried. Why are you worried? she's worried I might catch Dutch elm disease. I said, Mom, people don't get Dutch elm disease. Dogs get it. She goes, dogs get it. She was worried about Buster, you know. She says, what happens to dogs? I said, they lose their bark. So I'm at this job, and summertime is great. I'm outdoors. I'm having fun. Wintertime in Michigan, you know, dark, cold, snow. It was like a dark night of the soul. And I'm working on a serious book on education, a second book. I wrote a book, first book, second book. It's not happening. And I hear a voice. I don't hear voices, but I hear a voice. The voice says, stop working on that book. It's the past. You need to focus on the future. What's the future? Nobody answers. A few weeks later, they put a new guy with me, Larry Kelsaw. Turns out Larry Kelsaw is a brilliant psychologist disguised as a black truck driver. Huh. And Larry and I start working together, and he says, you're a writer. Why don't we start a newspaper? And we started an underground humorous newspaper for the guys at the shop. Totally transformed the workplace through humor. And that's what got me started on the career that I'm doing right now. That was
in my hearing aids.
Oh, that's fine.
That was 40 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
Oops, we got to mute people.
Sorry, I muted.
That was 40 years ago that happened. And I'll tell you one story that illustrates how powerful this was. Our nemesis, our opponent at the workplace was Foreman Don. He was this tough ex-Marine, and we were always at odds with Don. So last year I had a reunion with Larry. You know, went back to Ann Arbor. We were good. We've been good friends ever since. You know, and he said, you know, he ended up working there for a long time. He says, after a while, I became friends with Foreman Don. And Don used to say, boy, I wish you guys were still doing that newspaper. I loved that newspaper. Mm. So that's what turned me around. A totally unexpected thing that looked like a setback and a dark night that got me started on what I've been doing for the last 33 1/3 years.
Wow. And hopefully another 33 1/3 years.
We should live so long. Well, I'm on track. I'm on track. Apparently, you know, part of living happily and healthfully is having a purpose and a focus, and having something that's important that wants to keep us here. So, as long as there's the mission to, you know, bring laughter and healing, and people want it, I'm here to serve.
And we all benefit from it.
Thank you. Yes, we do. I benefit from it. I amuse myself. You know, Trudy and I laugh all the time. We laugh all the time. We find things to laugh at. We make silly jokes. At one time, one of us did something clever and said, am I not brilliant? And the other one said, you are not brilliant. So now we have that as kind of a thing that we do, just to remind us that the ego wants us to take our ego very seriously. When we take it less seriously, you know, it's not about being put down or being less than. It's exalting ourselves by remembering who we really are.
Yeah.
By being able to laugh at who we really aren't.
Exactly. And who we think we are most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Who we think we are.
Yeah.
The world knows better. I mean, we're only fooling ourselves. We're transparent to the world. Yeah. We're just fooling ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, Steve, it has been a great pleasure. We're just about out of time.
I hear a new shipment's coming tomorrow.
Thank you so much for being with us this evening and sharing your humor and sharing your wisdom and sharing your insights.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to come into your living rooms more literally than one might imagine.
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.